Black indigenous and other people of color. LGBTQ spring. Black indigenous and other people of color. LGBTQ spring. Black indigenous and other people of color. LGBTQ spring. LGBTQ of color. Everyone is welcome. Spring, Black, indigenous, and other people of color.
Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, everybody. It's so great to see you all, to see your names, at least, in the participant boxes. I'm really glad to welcome you to this evening. My name is Lee Gaiman Jones, and I am a member of the Solidaire staff. I'm on the grant making and partnerships team, and specifically, I steward the Black Liberation Pooled Fund. So as I said, I'm really excited to have you all here with us today to connect with the fields at Rootsprings. I want to thank the Solidaire Network community of staff and members who have supported the work at the fields of at Rootsprings through support of the Black Liberation Pooled Fund, which they are a part of, and through showing up this evening, as well as Resource Generation community. I saw some of you all in the chat. I know I missed a few of the other foundations, but also to the individuals who may be here and not affiliated with any particular organization or foundation. But we really appreciate having each of you here with us today, spending your evening connecting with the fields at Rootsprings. Of course, I want to send the biggest thank you to the team at the fields at Rootsprings for organizing this rich and exciting event. And also, of course, for leading the powerful and necessary work that you all lead. I also just had to give one quick plug. I'm sure that you all, when you come on to speak, will speak to exactly who was singing in that beautiful intro video. But I believe that's just one of their board members. When I found out that was one of their board members, just like put together this beautiful song for them. I felt like I had really been slipping on all the board duties that I hold on other boards. So just one reflection of all the community support that you all hold. With that, I'm just honored and excited to introduce all of you all to the fields at Rootsprings, and I will turn things over to Alejandra, who will lead us through the next piece of our evening.
Hello and and welcome. I'm gonna start a little linear time guidance here on my phone. It is an honor to greet you and to be with each of you. In a few, we're going to take the next few moments here to ground into our bodies, to ground onto the land. Again, my name is Alejandra, and it is an honor to be holding this moment. As I check in with my body, I also feel the network of relationships that I'm a part of showing up with, and that I honor that each of you are a part of and showing up with. And in that, as I greet each of you on this call, I also invite us to take a few moments of silence within ourselves, within our environments, to honor those who might be here in spirit, those who might be on your hearts right now, who might have recently transitioned, gotten their angel wings. We are a part of all of that in matter and spirit. And so as I ground in my breath, I invite you to honor anybody that you might have with you right now in your heart, in your mind, in your gut. And you can say their names out loud. I welcome you to write their names into the chat. And I'll go on mute for just about 15 seconds or so that they may have that linear time to be with us. welcome all of you. So as we ground into the moment, I invite you to feel the weight of your breath, the weight of your shoulders, and invite them to fall. As you inhale and as you exhale, wherever you are, in whatever way feels good to your body, feel the support of the lungs underneath your shoulders, and allow once more your shoulders to drop. Feel the lightness of your head as it floats to the sky. And one more time, see if your shoulders can drop. Breathing in and breathing out, feeling the weight of your breath, the weight of your bones, of your rib cage, holding your lungs, the weight of your arms as they continue to invite your shoulders to drop. See if you can feel your weight upon whatever you might be sitting on, leaning up against. See if you can yield a little bit more into your feet. See if you can perceive the quiet support of the earth, under the ground, under your chair. And breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, recognizing the space in front of you, the space beside you, the space behind you. And I want you to imagine yourself in this room. That might be in a building, or perhaps you're tuning in your vehicle. Wherever you are, whatever container is around you, imagine that container from afar. Imagine that street or that block where you are from the sky. And imagine yourself all of a sudden among the stars, above it all. Feel, if you can, tune into the expansiveness around you, the spaciousness that could hold you. And as you start to look around and feel the support of those shadows and the darkness of the sky and the brilliance of the sky, the stars, see if you might be able to spot the earth down below. Just as you notice the edges of your body and the weight and mighty force of your life, see if you can tune in to that life and brilliance of that breathing earth, of the blues and the browns. And take a couple of breaths here. As you feel your exhale and your belly tightening around your organs, supporting your breath, see if you can start to dive back in towards the earth and back into the room where we started, and back into your body with weighted feet and pelvis and shoulders and a light head. As you're able, exhaling. 2 more breaths, inhale and exhale. And acknowledge to yourself the land that you are on. For us, here in Minnesota, the homeland of the Dakota people, home to the Anishinaabe, to the Ojibwe, to the Ho-Chunk, Indigenous people from all other nations. Take a moment to honor the very specific land that you are a part of and your relationship to it. Tune into the temperature around you and start to transition back into this technological world that is holding all of us, brilliantly so, two-dimensionally, with the fullness of our breath. Welcome. And with that, I pass this on to Sabby.
Thank you, Alejandra. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sabby Labor. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. Thank you for your time and energy tonight. I wanted to invite you to participate in a reflection prompt as we ground in this conversation together and invite you into this space. We wanted you to think about a time or a memory where having some time and space on land created some additional abundance or a setting or an environment for you to love, to heal, or to dream. We'd love, as you reflect on what that moment or moments are, and you feel willing to share, go ahead and pop any of those ideas and sharings into the chat. And again, we'd love to invite you to think about a memory where having time and space on land created space for you to love, heal, and dream. And as you feel ready, we'll go ahead and share those memories in the chat. And again, the funny thing about the webinar format is you have to click the everyone drop-down menu to share those pieces in the chat with all the folks on this call. So we'll hold the reflective space for a few moments if folks feel willing to type in and share some of those moments with other folks, those memories. Love it. So Kimberly offered hiking the Superior Hiking Trail. Love that. Catherine, going to college near the woods, I could go for a walk in the woods along the river when I was stressed out with classes and commitments. I always felt more calm, connected, and grounded after. Thank you for that sharing. Neka, visiting my mother's village in Nigeria for the first time in December 2019. That's really special, Neka. Lebo, outdoor, oh, they're coming in fast now. Outdoor dance classes in college. Lee says, the first time I set foot on an educational farm in my hometown, I felt expansive in a way I never had. Wonderful. Gretchen, I grew up on a cooperative camp surrounded by busybody, beloved families. I'm a recovering perfectionist child, so I would hang out in the forest to belt out my loudest songs. Nell says, swimming in the ocean in Maine with bioluminescent algae lighting up like glitter with each stroke. These are wonderful. Aaron, college at the Oregon Extension, a place to heal from harm from the church, to get in touch with my own voice, to love writing again, to slow down. Wonderful. Rebecca, the ocean, especially the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans, open up a portal to my deepest self. Joanna, working with youth in Philadelphia and seeing their joy, harvesting food. That's beautiful. Eugenia, hiking a beautiful volcano in Taiwan on New Year's Day and stopping at a temple after to pray to my ancestors. Thank you so much, all. So we wanted to kind of set the tone and ground in this beautiful gift of land. Thank you, Lois, being near water while the afternoon sun reflected into the rays. Thank you so much for all who shared, whether you shared in the chat or in spirit on this call. I'll thank Zoe. Zoe's closing us out with our final sharing. We had a convening of Minnesota Farmers of Color in August to talk about how BIPOC farmers heal with food, heal the land, heal our food system. We all shared the season's produce and shared seeds and thoughts about how our farming is healing. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate your engagement in this. I am going to hand it over to Jessica for a beautiful video to share with you all.
It started with the power of imagination and boldly stepping towards our dreams. This is Rootsprings, a retreat center on 36 acres of land, just 50 miles to the northwest of the Twin Cities. In the dead of winter, in February, 6 of us, 3 couples, boldly step forward to lovingly and respectfully steward the land, with nature, to host our communities, to make art, to celebrate, to rest, to heal. Although it is now very cold, we look forward to things thawing around here. We are excited to learn the land's personality in each of its seasons. A spring-fed lake, a labyrinth, eco trails, a garden, a small orchard, a farmhouse and wellness center, and 3 hermitages, cottages that will host our guests. One at the rise of the hill, one in view of the lake, and one a geodesic dome that will henceforth honor an ancestor who dreamed us into the future, the Octavia E. Butler Dome. We look forward to your visits. Come and see us. Rootsprings, a sacred space dedicated to healing and Black liberation.
Oh, here I am, so caught up in the video, and I forgot I'm next. So here we are. What a beautiful invitation to you all space. I haven't had the privilege to come out into that space, but I look forward to the opportunity. I also am excited in this moment to introduce you all to our moderator for today's conversation. Nwamaka Agbo is the CEO of Katali Foundation and Managing Director of the Restorative Economics Fund at Katali. Nwamaka's restorative economics framework centers the healing and restoration of vulnerable communities. Nwamaka also has led the review of Solidaire's grant-making process, the grant-making at Solidaire, and helped to shape what is now the Black Liberation Pooled Fund and serves on the fund's Movement Oversight Committee. Like the work of the fields at Rootsprings, Nwamaka believes in the power of community ownership and community governance to create self-determination, shared prosperity, and sovereignty. They are honored to have Nwamaka moderate as their work aligns with her vision to move towards the stewardship of resources like land and capital and away from the control of accumulation of wealth. Nwamaka once said, "Why can't we finance the world we want to see?" And that is exactly what we are here to do. Welcome, Nwamaka.
Thank you for the introduction, Lee, and thank you to the fields at Rootsprings for having me to moderate this conversation. Like Lee mentioned, our work with the Katali Foundation is focused on how can we redistribute resources to build the political, cultural, and economic power of Black, Indigenous, and all communities of color for our collective liberation. And so for me, when the group reached out and asked if I would moderate, I was really excited to hear about a project that recognized that claiming space was a political act, that recognized that having access to land to steward was the economic opportunity to support our communities, and that understanding that healing on the land is a cultural power building strategy as well. And for all of these reasons and so many more, which you'll hear over our next 30 minutes together, really excited to have you learn a bit more about this project and how it's transforming our relationship to each other. A few things I just want to lift up really quickly is that during this conversation, I hope that you come to understand how projects like this can facilitate healing and transformation, not just as an outcome, but as a part of the process of relationship building across diverse and impacted communities, of moving from transactional to transformational relationships with funders and donors, and come to understand what is possible when we heal our relationship to each other and to the land. And so would love to start to invite our panelists onto the stage. I'm going to have an opportunity to read their bios because any group that has its own theme song and its own video, you should really know about these people. So the first person I want to invite on to join me is Erin Sharkey. Erin is a writer, an artistic organizer, and cultural producer based in Minneapolis. She is the co-founder of an arts production collective called Free Black Dirt. She is editing A Darker Wilderness, a forthcoming anthology of Black nature writing for Milkweed Editions. Erin teaches at Metro State University and Minnesota Prisoner Writers Workshop. Currently, she is working in concert with other Black organizers to strengthen the Black organizing ecosystem, to respond to COVID-19, and to lead in this moment of uprising. Welcome, Erin. Next, I would love to have Signy join me. Signy Haraday is a multidisciplinary artist activist who uses theater to explore our identities and relationships. A founding member of Million Artists Movement, a cooperative committed to Black liberation and healing, incubating many projects including Pie Growers Collective, a farming project grounded in mutual aid and food sovereignty. Signy has lived in and served many years on the board of a limited equity housing co-op. She's co-founder of Mama and Mosaic, a woman of color theater company whose mission is to evoke positive social change. She is an associate company member of Pillsbury House Theater. Welcome, Signy. Next, I'll bring Lois Minow. Lois is the founder and the board president of Grandmother Circles. She currently works in a volunteer management for Hennepin County. She was raised to not know her Native heritage. Lois found her culture through fasting ceremonies, prayer, sweat lodge ceremony, shaking tent, and with the help of her spiritual keepers. She was a gifted sweat lodge leader and by her elder and teacher on Rootsprings farm property 5 years ago. And now she can say she's Ojibwe. Welcome, Lois. And last but not least, we have Queen Drea. Queen is a vocalist, performance, soundscape artist. By applying a poetic and often metaphorical language to her lyrics and compositions, she tries to approach a wide scale of subjects in a multi-layered way and likes to involve the audience in conversations as they accompany her on their musical journey. Queen Drea has created work for Intermedia Arts, Red Eye Theater, and Anaya Dance Theater, Penumbra Theater, and Pillsbury House Theater. Welcome, Queen Drea. So as you can see, we have a well-rounded panel of people who come from a lived-in movement experience and are going to take a moment to share with us how they all came together to be deeply invested in this project that brings together the Black and the Indigenous collective healing work that so many of us are connected to. And so to start off, I'll start with Erin and we'll kind of go back down the line as we were introduced, but invite you to share a little bit more about what personally led you here as individuals to this project. Erin.
Thank you, Nwamaka. Thanks so much for leading us through this conversation. I'm so excited to see all the names I know in the participant list. I'm sad I can't see your faces, but so happy that everyone's here. I love nature. I'm not like a super nature girl, but if I think back in my life, I feel like being in nature has been fundamental for me in terms of like knowing who I am, creating relationships, being connected with my spirituality. And over the last couple of years, I've been thinking about nature as a political space, and thinking about how much there's active forces that are trying to convince us that nature is neutral or that it only belongs to folks who conquer it. I think we get a lot of images of like people clad in Patagonia gear climbing to the top of something and staking a flag there. And that feels really different from my experience of nature and the ways that it opens up and holds me and that it helps me decompress and be present. And so I started dreaming, thinking about like the ways that retreat has been instrumental to me as an artist, as a movement worker, as a cultural worker, and talked with Signy about the ways that that's the same for her. And we started dreaming about building a retreat, a place that artists could come and make work, artists could come and just be, that could hold folks that are spent from work on the front lines, can be a place that people can use to dream together. And so, yeah, we started small conversations a few years ago, and then had this great opportunity to step into an actual thing where we could invite our community to be with us and to take deep breaths, to deal with grief, to love on each other, to navigate challenges between them. So I'll leave it there. Signy might fill in the rest of the origin story. But yeah, I think I love Rootsprings because it's a place that invites me to be me and to think about generation, to think about what I can leave, to be present with myself.
Thank you, Erin. Signy, since you've been called into space, would love to invite you to share more about what led you to this project.
Oh, that is so sweet. I just have to echo what Erin said. Just like deep gratitude for people who are sharing their time with us today. I think as we talk about taking space and making space for healing, time is this finite resource that we get to actually share with each other as a demonstration of our love and commitment to one another. So just with deep gratitude, thank you all for being here and giving us some of your time tonight. Erin said it, I think I would just add to the story a little bit by saying, we had collected many case studies of other retreat centers, many that you may know and some that you may not, to kind of frame our thinking around how would we want to do a retreat center? How would we want to do land stewardship? And one of those places was actually Wellsprings Farm. And in 2015, myself and another group of Black healers were on the land, actually in retreat, after having been supporting in a healing capacity organizers after the murder of Jamar Clark here in the Twin Cities. And we went to Wellsprings Farm, and it was healing. And it was a moment when we said, healers also need healing. And so that is where the layer of focus on not just artists and activists, but also healers came into the story of our being. And it was not long after that moment when we had said to ourselves, we are going to focus on our healing, that another beloved was murdered and taken away from us by state-sanctioned violence. And we were hurled back into the work, as so many people on this call are very familiar with and know. And with that, in many ways, the dreams that Erin and I had been sharing were collecting dust on a shelf. And then in June of last year, the owners of that land reached out via email to myself and 3 other Black organizers in the Twin Cities and said, hey, we're looking to transition this land to folks of color. Are you interested? And I was like, what? Y'all is the case study. You're not the place. And so then I called Erin. I was like, girl, like real talk, I think it might be happening. And we talked, and at the time I was farming with Alejandra, with Pie Growers Collective, and we were doing all of this land work. I was like, oh, like maybe we should, like, is that the thing? And we just started to talk, and we started to say, is this it? And they had been, for 5 years, Wellsprings Farms had been holding something that they called community supported retreat, which they called CSRs, which are like CSAs, which many folks on this call, I'm sure, are familiar with. You put in some money and you get what the farmers harvest, and you share that harvest. And they had done that from a place of sacred economies and communities in relationship to the land and stays on the land. And so everything just sort of seemed like it fell into place. And we asked our community for support and said, hey, y'all, is this the right time? Is this the right place? Can you be in community in concert with us on this? And folks said yes. And so here we are.
And we're so honored to be here with you. I would also love to see if we could get Lois to share a little bit more about what brought you to the project.
Well, I was actually on the board and part of the brainstorming of the Wellsprings retreat. So to me, it's so exciting to be on the board and connected to the land as it fulfills that healing sacred community around the land, around each other. It's just really, it's so exciting and very life-giving. As I mentioned, I'm on the board currently of Rootsprings, and why I'm connected to it is because land is restorative. I've always gone to the woods. Anybody that knows me, I'm an avid walker. I'm always taking pictures of nature. It represents beauty, art, all the things that support and nurture me as a person. But also what happened on that land is I was able to connect with my Ojibwe culture, and through working with an elder and a variety of other people, was gifted with a sweat lodge that's housed on Rootsprings, which to me just kind of makes me laugh because it's such a wonderful journey to be around sweet sacred earth community healers, the land, the energy that the co-op holds, and the sacredness. It is amazing. And we have a saying, we say, you know, Igani Kana, my sacred relatives. That's what it feels like, that I'm with my sacred relatives when I go on that land. There's you drive down the driveway and it feels like I'm going somewhere nurturing, like to a grandparent's home, or just a place where I belong. And that is a really amazing feeling, to feel like I belong, and that the land and the earth and the grounds and the water welcomes me to be there. And then the co-op and all the other people associated with it. That's why I'm connected to it. It's full of life and restoration and healing and art and creativity and play.
So beautiful to have a place that creates a sense of community and belonging, that supports us to come together in safe, sacred space to organize and build with each other. Thank you, Lois, for sharing your experience and your story. Queen Drea, welcome back. Would love for you to take a moment to share a little bit about what brings you to this project, and then we're going to start to delve into our questions.
Sure, yes, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I dropped and I may drop again. My connection is unstable, which is with the little sign I keep getting on my computer. But I came to, what draws me to Rootsprings is its peacefulness. I came to be on the board of Rootsprings through some cajoling by Signe. Yeah, exactly, much love. And it's because I, had been talking about some land my family has in Mississippi and how I wanted to have a artist retreat and wellness center, because they're not doing anything with it. And Signe was like, well, why don't you get on the board, and that'll help you when you're ready to do it, for your space. So I came up right before they purchased the land, and I was like, yes, that weekend, it was last October, and it was just as soon as you drive into the field, the land, it's like a whole wash comes over you, and you can't help but want to come back. It just draws you in. And it is a revolutionary act to leave the city and just go somewhere, walk in the woods, and be and think and think and breathe. And so that's what draws me there. And then also the fact that it is a place where I feel safe there. You know, I would sometimes camp and wouldn't always feel safe, because you look around and you're like, I'm by myself as me, you know, this brown person out by themselves. And so it's a safe place, and it's a place where you learn so much. Like I've learned so much going out there about the garden, and about, you know, tending to chickens and all these what never even heard of guinea, and why they got them. And so it's an educational space, just, you know, just being there. So you have rest, you have education, you have which is a whole, you know, and then you can just go back into your life recharged. And so that's what keeps me drawn to Rootsprings.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, Queen. And yes, I hope that we all get to have that experience out on this beautiful piece of land not too long from now. To move into some questions just about the design of the project. My first question is for you, Lois. As someone who's had a long-term connection to this land and the people of this place, I'm wondering if you can share a bit more about how you all through this project are rethinking the concept of ownership of the land.
Well, I think it's really important, you know, when we use the words like stewardships or co-op, I never hear people say, I own this land. No, nobody's saying that. They're talking about kind of being entrusted with it, and kind of listening to the land and what it's calling forth, what it needs from us. And I think that's how I see it, is that it's about holding it or being with it versus owning it, which is a really unique way to be with. And I hear that come from the co-op members quite frequently, about they feel entrusted with the land, and they're holding the land, and they're with the land. There's not a dominance over it. And that is really beautiful to be a part of. And you can feel the reverence for the land. And it's not about dominating the land, it's kind of being with it. And I ought to also say, you know, that's kind of emphasized in the ecological studies that have been done out there, to really understand what, you know, there's wetlands out there, and there's unique areas that aren't found anywhere else in Minnesota, I understand. And then what does that mean? You know, when you look at expanding and you have wetlands, how do you look at that? Well, instead of saying, oh, we'll do this or that, there's how can we hold that land and the gifts that that land has, and honor it and work with it. It's a different way, and it's very beautiful. And that would be my answer.
Thank you, Lois. Thank you for sharing what's possible when we're not seeking to dominate, but really be in relationship with. And what that indicates to me is that there's the opportunity for a process of healing as we rethink our relationship to land. And so my next question is for Signe. Signe, could you share a bit more about how does the concept of land stewardship and the ways in which you are engaging with the land through practices, how does that facilitate the collective healing for your community and for those that are involved in this project?
Thank you so much for that question. It's a powerful question unto itself. And I'll maybe start with the word relationship. I think much is possible through relationship, and you know, whether you want to look at the studies of what happens when you put your hands in dirt and the antidepressive, you know, microbes that are literally in the earth, or like what actually happens to your nervous system when you are in the woods for 3 days. And there's all of like, right, all of that exists. And from the stories you all even shared in the chat at the opening reflection, I think we can all see how, if we are meaning to be in intentional relationship with land, then we have the opportunity and possibility for that healing and transformation. We often say to guests, when they get to the land, let her welcome you. She can do it better than we can, and she can hold so much more than we can. And so I see that showing up with guests coming to the land, both individually and collectively, who often arrive with a sense of exasperation and a sense of exhaustion, to be really honest. And over the duration of their stay, I see it begin to melt away. And something that has been surprising for us as dreamers and stewards in this process is, I think we, in part because of the history of this land, was often solo retreat. People would come by themselves and they would stay. I mean, the word hermitage comes from hermit, you know, it's like a thing. And so I think we were kind of like, okay, that's how people engage. But what we've actually found is that when groups come together, and that's how our community has primarily, I wouldn't say primarily, that's how our community has often engaged with the land during our stewardship, is people coming collectively to ask a question, to sit, to be reflective. And it's in those group environments where like they are experiencing collective healing. And so I think that's a direct relationship to people making that choice to come together. But I think that we can extrapolate that the ecosystem is also supported, even when we are supporting the individuals. And I know for us as the stewards in this process, my life has changed. Like, you may have seen in the slideshow some pictures of my grandchildren, and watching them be able to come and run up and down a hill without fear of cars, without fear of violence, without fear, and nurturing that in them heals me. And I am so grateful for those sort of intergenerational moments that are also happening on the land. And I can feel the healing in me because it's the invitation that Alejandra invited us with. My shoulders literally start to drop. And I can feel like my own nervous system changing as I get to witness how people are engaging and learning and loving and falling in love with themselves in different ways. There are people who come who didn't know how to be by themselves and are like, that has been such a gift for them. So I kind of talked in a bunch of different ways, but I hope that I answered the core of your question.
Yeah, I think you did, right? I think you touched on what is possible for individuals. You also touched on why it's important to have collective healing, right? I think in our movements, we're always toggling back between the individual self-care, but also community care and collective care. And thank you for just kind of naming why having access to land and space at scale is an important container to facilitate and support both. So what I'd love to kind of delve into next, Aaron, would love to invite you to take us into kind of the technical aspects of how our values and commitment around land stewardship and our practice of collective healing, how do we actually navigate that within the confines of a legal structure that we know doesn't necessarily reflect our values? Could you talk to us a bit about what is the legal entity structure by which you were all stewarding this land together and by which you all are able to engage in collective healing through programs? Just kind of break it down for us as it's helpful for us to understand what you're fundamentally doing different in this place.
Thanks for that question. I'm excited. I have never been before in my life been excited about legal structures around organizations. It's new to me. I'm embracing it. It's a new thing. And I'm excited. I have some healing to do from years and years of being inside of the nonprofit industrial complex and being in really unhealthy relationships with with funders, with community folks around resources. And so the Fields at Rootsprings is a really exciting model, I think, and I really hope that it's inspiration to other folks. So basically, there's two halves of Rootsprings and the Fields at Rootsprings. One part of it is that we have formed a cooperative, a business structure that allows us to reclaim some autonomy, to like actually have a different relationship with stewarding a piece of land. So the cooperative part is part limited access worker-owned co-op. Part of it is housing co-op, and we're sort of figuring it out as we go. We're working with some really great legal support and some pro bono support. So we're forming this cooperative. We have done it, and it allows us to really take this property off of the speculation market and to really think about the ways that we as queer people can reimagine inheritance and the ways that we might share this land for generations with other folks who we have like the time to do to train them and in the love of this land as we are getting to know it. The other part of it is this nonprofit, the Fields at Rootsprings, which we're not solely dependent on, but it is a really great way for us to have community buy-in and leadership of really important community members who are invested in this and invested in the programs of the Fields. Also allow us to receive nonprofit funds when that's important to do. And so it gives us some nimbleness, I think, allows us to both have a long-term relationship with the land, to have individuals who come together and are working collectively to steward it for the long haul, and the nonprofit possibilities as well. We're also thinking about the relationship between the nonprofit and the cooperative. And so we've been thinking about how the nonprofit has a stake in what happens for the long run with the cooperative. So yeah, it's in ways pretty simple, and in other ways very complex. And that's why we have legal people that explain things to us. So I hope I was able to explain it at least on the surface level.
No, and thank you for taking the time just to break it down. I think a couple of things I want to underscore in your comments is while this is not your area of expertise, you leaned into developing the skills, capacity, and knowledge for the sake of your community, right? So you guys could hold this internally. I just want to lift up the importance of us being able to develop the capacity within our existing communities. The other piece that I'll lift up, and we'll kind of get to the capital needs section in a moment, is that there's a number of different entities that you all have had to create in order to hold the total vision of how you want to steward this land, how you want to be a relationship with each other, provide access to housing programs, all these pieces. And this is important to lift up because we know that a 501c3 unto itself is not enough to get us all free. And so it requires our communities to have access not only to different legal entity structures, but therefore different forms of capital to meet the needs of our transformative visions for change. And so for those of you that are here to fund and give resources, please tune in and listen up in terms of this is what it takes for us all to win and get free. But before we kind of delve straight into the capital needs piece, wanted to kind of come back to talk a little bit more about the unique Black and Indigenous partnership that is happening on this land together. And specifically, I want to start with Queen Drea, and then Lois will invite you to add in your comments as well. Can you explain how this ecosystem approach, right? How this project in particular is designed to catalyze systemic change for your community, right? We're here talking about one specific project, but how does this specific project actually transform systems that improve the material conditions for people on the ground? And if there are specific systems that you are hoping to transform through this project that you want to just kind of lift up for us.
Sure. I think what I'm seeing is, and Signe alluded to this, is groups of people coming to the land together as one, as opposed to solo people coming alone. And what I see, and then seeing this project, and then going to wherever, and leaving Rootsprings with an idea for another collective project. another way to work together, and seeing how I think that sometimes you can talk about building a collective, but sometimes it's hard to really sometimes it's hard to see how to put it into practice and see how to actualize it. And so I feel like having this project here so close to the Twin Cities, you know, right at the epicenter of, you know, our country's, you know, revolution, which seems to be fizzling out. But what I like about it is like, is so covertly still happening, you know, what I see in the Twin Cities. And Rootsprings is a place for people to go to get the model for how to work collectively and how to actually build, and not just talk about building, but to actually put it into practice. And so to have full groups come there, stay there, and have their own strategizing sessions in that energy, I think it gives us a certain amount of juice to cutting and I can't like name specific systems, but what I hope to see is more collective land ownership, more making spaces. Someone wrote in the chat that it's, you know, it's revolutionary to claim the space, and it is, you know, more claiming, saying we belong here and we're going to be here, and we're going to build something beautiful here. And so that's what I'm seeing. We were just on the land Sunday doing some dreaming for Rootsprings for more, and what we all made these 3D, you know, we all made some art pieces that to symbolize what we saw for the land. But everybody made something different, but what we all made was something that could be enjoyed and experienced for a collective of people outside, as opposed to, you know, right now it is set up to be more of a retreat, my solo space. And there is the wellness center, but then we've had, I think the concept of so many outside spaces has come because of COVID, but what it has done is it's laid a baseline, and then now we're like, we're moving to the next level. And that's what I see from other groups that I know have been out there. They've used the fields at Rootsprings to as something to look at on how to build, and the energy that is found on the land to fuel that their next step. So. Lois?
What comes to my mind is that our ceremonies heal. They help connect to our authentic self, and it's layered. It's layered because the sweat lodge is about the creator's breath, about the creator's healing energy that comes from the grandfather, the sacred rocks coming into our lodge. It's about our spirit guides that come into the lodge to help us heal. And so when I think of the sweat lodge, I'm thinking of it in a variety of ways. Your question was about like, how does this connect or bring about a higher well-being? Well, being your authentic self, seeking ceremony from the creator to aid in healing. And the way the lodge has been set up, it goes with the first part. We do it indoors, and basically the first door, and the community decided this as a get together. The first door is about thanking and recognizing how we came to have the lodge and what all had to happen before, you know, kind of recognizing who owned the land and who had it, and all the places, right? The second door is about asking for healing for others, that people come to the lodge and they ask for healing of others, or other situations in their life. The third door is healing for themselves. And the fourth door is about hope, humor, and healing. And people can share a story or about a time they were healed or whatever. So that the lodge, it connects people to their authentic self, their ancestors, their healing energy of the sacred earth. The breath of God comes into the pipe. It's just a sacred way of being, connection to your culture. Like for me, I didn't know, I wasn't raised to know my culture, and through a variety of things, I have learned it. I have connected to who I am, and it gives me energy to do other work, other ways of being, where I have to show up and make action steps and work for justice and everything else. It gives me energy. So that's kind of how I would answer your question. It fulfills something for me.
Thank you so much, Lois. That was beautiful. And I would be a terrible moderator of this conversation if I didn't just actually delve into the money question, right? And I think it's important for us to create space for this, because part of how we transform our relationship to capital and move out of an extractive economic system is to be transparent in naming the quality and type of relationships we want to be in around capital and with those that have the opportunity to share it and give it. And so, and the questions are coming in hot and heavy, but I've been given the fact that we only have 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask Sydney and Aaron to really share the time and quickly, if you could name, what does a healing and regenerative relationship with a funder look like for all of you in resourcing this project? What are the types of characteristics of this partnership? And what are some of the transformative funding practices that you're interested in cultivating with funders? Just kind of give us some bullet points.
Bullet points. Yeah. Okay, Erin, here we go. Do you want to actually, let's do this as a game.
I'm better at bullet points than she is. You start, then I'll go.
Yeah, can we just go back and forth like volley? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to say a characteristic that we would like to have is relationship, a willingness to build long-term relationship, because work needs to be sustained over time. Go.
I also think that like having a relationship with a funder that values communication, understands that things change, and you learn as you're in it, and that these valuable things that we're learning and trying to implement are things that we want to share with other people, and we want to not feel like when things don't go exactly like the plan of the proposal, that's a failure, and that we need to figure out how to communicate that to show that we're not failing. I don't know if that makes sense, but Signe.
Well, I'm going to actually piggyback on that just a little bit, and I'm going to say fund failure. Because like if we look at any research in the world, innovation comes out of failure. And I think our overwhelming need to do the best, be the best, is really steeped in our capitalistic tendencies and indoctrination. And that we actually need funders to be willing to fund failure, because that's actually how we're going to learn, and then help us share those learnings with other people, not as a shame campaign, but as a like strategy for innovating how we think about getting to ideas that are actually what community is asking for. Erin.
I'm also interested in funding that wants to get creative. And I think that some of the ways that the nonprofit industrial complex, it like binds up foundations, and they can only do things a certain way. And they have to draft their requests for proposals in a way that people need to hit exactly these marks. And I think that they're in that relationship, I think there's lots of potential for us to get creative together, for us to bring our expertise as folks who are in the work and in relationship and with folks, with funders who want to build. Yeah.
And then I would add to that, I would be like, have your values, know your values, share your values, live your values. Like, I think it says a lot, that we are having this call tonight, led by someone who's a funder, not directly funding us, but like someone who gets it, right? Like the Katali Foundation is asking big questions about reparations, about how do we move money? How do we think about a regenerative economy that is not extractive? Lee was a partner with us and was like, how can I help? And we said, well, maybe this. And Lee was like, oh yeah, this, let's do it together. And so I would say have values and then live those values in expressed action.
Thank you so much for that rapid fire back and forth. And so honored to be invited to support this conversation. Really just want to lift up for the funders and donors on the call. If those descriptions fit either what you are currently doing or who you aspire to be, this might be an opportunity for you to learn by doing, to transform in relationship alongside this amazing project. So as we move into the final parts of our conversation today, I hope all of us, including myself at Katali, take a moment to figure out how we can really lean into those practices that you all have just invited us into. I'm so sorry we didn't get to all the amazing questions that were coming up, but I know that members from the project will drop their contact info in the chat box. There will be opportunities for you to follow up and learn more, not only from the project, but also how you can support them. Thank you so much, Erin, Sydney, Lois, and Queen Drea. It's been a pleasure being in conversation with you. And I'm going to hand it back to Neka to take us through our next piece of the agenda.
Hi, everyone. I am Neka. My pronouns are she, they, and I am the lead donor organizer for the Fields at Rootsprings, and I'm really excited to be here with you all. I too am fangirling after that panel conversation, and I'm leaving with a lot of things. I think the biggest one that I have written down here on my little post-it note is claiming space is a political act, and so I'm going to meditate on that a little bit later tonight. And so next up, we are going to do a couple of testimonials from folks who have engaged relationships with us here at the Fields at Rootsprings. And we're going to hear from three folks, one by video. We're going to hear from Rox Anderson, who is a brilliant, dope artist organizer in Minneapolis and Minnesota. Then we're going to hear from two groups who funded this work, one from Lee at Solidaire, and then also another Lex, who is based in Minneapolis, who will have a lot to share as well. And so first, I'm going to cue up Rox Anderson, who is going to speak a little bit about what time at the Fields at Rootsprings has meant to them.
What has time on the land at Rootsprings meant to you?
Everything. Is that too basic? I think it's just, I don't even know how to capture that, Jessica. That's such a deep feeling. I don't really know how to put it in words. Which is why I said flippantly everything. It feels really powerful as a queer person of color to be able to go to land that's owned by queer people of color, and having the feeling that you have when you go into shared space parts of you, so I'm not having to explain queerness, and I'm not having to explain BIPOC experience, and it's not that even everybody is a Black trans person there, but it's that they have alignments in those communities, and they have chosen to educate themselves in a way that makes it safe and a place of sanctuary. And so I think that there's this thing where we have this longing to be in nature. We are of nature, all of us, right? And we don't get to access that because getting to it creates such a chaos in our nervous system that it's almost not worth it. And I think that going to Rootspring, I have that same feeling of energy, of fear, of I don't know what's going to happen on the road getting there. But I know when I get there, I'm not going to have to do any of the other stuff. I'm not going to have to be weird around the caretakers of the land. I'm not going to have to squash my queerness. I'm not going to have to. And that helps me settle my nervous system so much faster.
And now we'll hear from Lee at Solidaire. You're on mute, Lee.
Great. What I was trying to communicate is that I'm also the person in charge of spotlighting. So I was trying to do all the things at once, but now here I am. Thank you all so much for those beautiful images. Your video work is so just really feels like it helps us to feel into the space that you all have cultivated and continue to steward. And yeah, as I said before, my primary work at Solidaire is to steward the Black Liberation Pooled Fund, and the Fields at Rootsprings is one of our inaugural grantee partners with the Black Liberation Pooled Fund. And honestly, bringing them on in partnership was an easy yes for us. We had a long list of very compelling applications, and this was an easy yes. I was introduced to their work through my moms, who have deep relationships in the Twin Cities as artists and facilitators. I myself am also an artist and land steward and community builder, so you can see why my moms were excited to direct me towards this work, to pay attention and take note of what they were up to. But beyond my personal interests and connections to these bodies of work, it's really evident that they're woven throughout the art, the land stewardship, the community building that the Fields at Rootsprings is offering is a unique blend of joy, care, and culture keeping that illuminate the power of land-based healing justice work. If you know Solidaire, then you know that we are committed to racial justice, gender justice, and climate justice. And the Fields at Rootsprings is an obvious reflection of all three of those areas of work. Within the Black Liberation Pooled Fund specifically, sorry, I'm also getting a call, but we're gonna ignore that. Within this fund specifically, we're really emphasizing the importance of land projects, because without having a deep conversation about how we restore relationships within Black communities to land, then we can't really have a conversation about Black liberation. We're also really emphasizing a commitment to supporting work that is led by queer folks and women. And without that, we won't be able to tap into the long-standing historic leadership of Black women and Black queer folks that have brought vision, deep roots in community, resistance, and resilience. And we are consistently looking for the ways that we can uplift, support, invest in resistance work that is challenging the current structures, future building that is giving us possibilities of tomorrow, and infrastructure that will sustain it all. The Fields at Rootsprings offers resistance to oppressive systems that are robbing all of our humanity. They offer practical experimentation and alternative future models that we get to try on, practice the way that Signe described. We get to try it out, we get to fail, we get to try again, we get to play. And they're offering infrastructure for individuals, for communities, and for movement. I know that with the recent campaign with Yes for Minneapolis in their area. Post campaign, the folks that were running that campaign came to the fields at Rootsprings and with some funding and a request to work with them to build some healing and some restoration after a really long fought battle that they put in. And it's these types of moments of both individual and also collective healing that they are offering that is transformative. So supporting the fields at Rootsprings is an investment in a world that centers rest and respite, joy and creativity, community and earth, and it is an investment in hope and possibility, but also in reality, because this is something that is happening right now. So I'm asking you all to invest in the possibility and the reality of another world and another way of being, by supporting the fields at Rootsprings and their goals of regenerative land stewardship and the other necessities for taking care of the space that they are stewarding. I hope that for you all, it's also an easy yes. With that, I will pass it to Lex.
Hey y'all, it's such an honor to be here tonight. I want to share a little bit of why I gave to Rootsprings and the joy of being in community with the folks at Rootsprings. The first time I went to Rootsprings, the drive felt really familiar. I can't count how many times I've taken the freeway out of the Twin Cities and followed the little roads that sprout off of the interstate and curve through the cornfields in central Minnesota. I grew up in the Twin Cities and my mom grew up a little bit north of Rootsprings. And so I know this drive from so many trips to my grandma's house when I was a kid. And I know some things about how my people got to that area generations ago. I'm descended from one of the founding families of the town that my mom grew up in. But other branches of that tree, I don't know as much about. But I know that many of my ancestors found their way to that area around the time that the Homestead Act was handing out quote unquote free land to white settlers. And so maybe my people started building their lives and their wealth off of that free land, quote unquote, or maybe they just benefited from the schools and the businesses and the opportunities that sprouted up after the prairies were plowed under, or maybe just from the wealth that was generated by slavery and then passed from one white hand to another in those years. But either way, what I know is that the stepping stone that led first to the stability and then wealth for my family came from broken relationships with the lands, with Dakota and Anishinaabe people who were living on it, Black people who labored to build the infrastructure of the country. And so it's clear to me that it's on me to face that history honestly and to look for ways to move towards repair. As you've heard tonight, the land that we live on is beautiful. It's incredibly beautiful here in Minnesota. And like I said, it isn't my people's land, we're new here. But in this backwards way, I've had so much access to this land my whole life. That's true for a lot of white, middle, and upper class people in Minnesota. I've gotten to know the woods and the water in a way that has saved my life. And I grew up, going up north, as people say here, with my family to their second home by a lake, going to summer camp, learning to paddle a canoe in the Boundary Waters. And, for those of us who are settlers, whose people benefited from slavery, there's not a single easy answer about what we do to repair that and to start moving towards repair. But sometimes there are these clear steps, yeah? And when the crew asked me to support Rootsprings by giving money, it was such an easy yes. Of course, what a gift to be asked to do this little bit of repair and to do it together. I went to Rootsprings for the first time in July of this year. I went with my comrades from Reclaim the Block, the people I'd been organizing with for years to move money out of the Minneapolis Police Department and into the institutions that really keep people safe. And we had had a long year full of tear gas and high pressure decisions and movement conflict. Our second day at Rootsprings, we set aside time, you all know how this goes, to dig into some big questions about our work. We hired a facilitator, laid out the agenda, and we're all sprawled out in the sun under the pear trees at the top of the hill. The conversation was thick and messy and necessary. And then 2 hours in, someone took a slow breath and said, I need us to be done for today. I need to go jump in the lake. And we looked around, everybody shrugged, and slowly everybody smiled. So you know the rest. 30 minutes later, we were diving off the floating dock, giggles and cackles echoing across the water. And it wasn't escapism, it wasn't looking away, it was just asking the water to help hold all of it with us for an afternoon. And honestly, this feels like the intervention that Rootsprings is making for all of us. Like the land and the people who are helping steward it are saying, the meeting agenda will still be there, but come out to the woods and jump in the lake. Let the land have your back. Rootsprings really reminds me of one of those plants that sprouts up at exactly the right time in our organizing ecosystem. It's one of those plants that builds the soil, helps pull out the toxins, helps fortify us for what these times are asking of us. This moment in history has surfaced so much truth that has been buried, and it's opened so many possibilities for changing what we do from here. I gave money to Rootsprings because I need it and we need it, because I owe it, because I'm learning to practice repair, and also because it's a joy to be asked. So I hope you'll join me. Thanks.
Thanks, Lex and Lee and Rox for those beautiful testimonials. You know, when we first started this work a year ago, one of the things that we knew for sure was that we wanted to model a new way of fundraising and a new way of building relationships with funders that didn't fall into these traps, like Signe mentioned earlier and Erin, around the nonprofit industrial complex. And so through our work, a lot of values emerged that we wanted to root this work in, and we come back to often. A few that Signe and Erin mentioned earlier, that this work is relational. It's not transactional. We really are here to build relationships with folks. That it's liberatory, that we're not here asking for charity or generosity. We're here because we're all building towards our collective liberation. And we want to engage with folks who see themselves being implicated in this work. That our work is abundant, that we are really trying hard to resist the culture of scarcity. And we know that all the resources that we need are out there. And then one of my favorites, explicit. We are explicit about race, we're explicit about class, power, and privilege, and we're explicit about the fact that we need money. That money is not the only thing that we need, nor is it the most important thing that we need. This work has always been and always will be people powered, but we are explicit about the fact that we need money. And that's what I'm here today to ask you and invite you into giving money to support this work. So our goal is to raise $2 million by the end of this year. That money will go towards paying for the land so that we can transition it to being fully cooperatively steward and to steward the title of the land. That money will go towards restoring the land, the wetlands that we're stewarding, as well as the hermitages and wellness center on the land. And then that money will also go towards kickstarting the operations and the programming of the fields at Rootsprings. So far, we've raised $1.5 million, which is crazy. We've been doing this for less than a year. So since January, we've raised $1.5 million. And we've done that through countless one-on-one conversations with folks. We've done it through small gatherings with values-aligned friends and family, and a very small number of foundations who have aligned to our radical vision of healing and justice and liberation. And so as you think about your contribution, I want to invite you into a little bit of a visualization. So if you'll close your eyes or lower your gaze, and let's transition. Let's take one really big collective deep breath together, breathing in and out. With your eyes closed, envision a world in which you and everyone has a place to rest and restore. What does that world look like? What does it sound like? What are the tastes and the smells of that world? And how does it feel? How does that world impact your greater community? How does it impact your relationship to others? And how does it impact your relationship to yourself? We need all of us to realize this world. And I'm sure many of us, or many of you, came into this event with a number in mind that you wanted to contribute. So I'm gonna invite you to say that number in your head right now. Say it in your head and notice how it feels. Maybe it feels comfortable. Okay, now double that number. How do you feel now? Maybe some tingling and tightness, or maybe some spaciousness and giddiness. We want you to arrive at a number where you feel yourself leaning a little bit out of your comfort zone, but leaning towards that world that you were just envisioning, that world that we're all here together to create. But not so far that you fall on your face. So experiment with your edge. Maybe even sway your body back and forth, front to back, and just check in with how you feel. Now, wherever you're at, let's take one big breath together. Breathing in and breathing out. And as you're ready, you can bring your attention back to the screen, back to me. You can open your eyes. So I invite you to join us by making a meaningful contribution to help us reach our $500,000 goal before the end of the year. I'm going to drop a link in the pledge form, a link in the chat of a pledge form. And if you feel ready to commit now, I invite you to fill out that pledge form, leaning into the abundance, leaning into the relationship, leaning into being explicit. I invite you to state how much you're able to commit to supporting this work. And as I do that, I'm going to transition it over to my good friend, Erin, who was actually the one who invited me into this work and a member of the Rootsprings Co-op. Here's the pledge form in the chat. Give away, give all that you can. A phrase that I learned from Nell, give all that you can. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nneka. Thanks for letting me rope you into this project. I wanted to just close today as you're looking at the form and following your heart with a poem I wrote for a collection that's called Walk Towards It, which was published by local writers here in the Twin Cities in response to Trump's being elected in 2016 and how dark that winter felt. And so this poem is called We Are Not Afraid of Winter. We are not afraid of winter. We have weathered winter before, and we know it wants to kill us. To kill us is only a temporary solution. This winter, the wolf may howl its long neck, white and bold, but we know we do not owe them our soft sides. Our loam is hungry to hide what is left of our nourishment. Our seed promises more, forevermore to sustain us. We do not owe them access to our dark movements. The alchemy of how our holding is how we are held, how life explodes in a grave. In this cold, machines give up and remind us they aren't magic, but made. Together, we can travel back to when we made each shape, like coin, like bars, like ladder, like a stew pot, our black bodies, its red burning fuel. Remember, there was a time before, as there will be a time after. We will make this time. What a gift it is to live where water reminds us we are elemental. Here, We know it can be ghost or chisel, a maker of ways, a cloud to hide fish sleeping in the slow, or something dry. Can be trickster, thief, can make everything quiet. It is warmest if you tunnel inside the crush, but breath is more evident there. There, our only employ is to keep our smallest lights dancing. Spring will come. She always comes for us, but until then, let's listen to our shoulders who rise to protect our ears and praise the way we round to hold each other, to hold ourselves safe and share the very heat, our very heat when it is most scarce. It is this sharing that will save us. Thanks so much. I appreciate everyone joining us. And if you wanted to leave a last word, do that in the chat. And thanks.
Thank you all again so much for being here. It's so beautiful to see all of the love come through in the chat. And I hope you all will really check out the pledge form and fill it out. It's also a great way to stay connected with these beautiful humans at the fields at Rootsprings. I know we had people aren't really leaving yet, which is fantastic. Love that. I know we had a playlist. I don't know if that's like somewhere that we could also play because people can hang out, chat amongst yourselves in the chat. But thank you all again for being here.